Developments. We have retired Lieutenant Colonel Jonathan Conricus. He is a former IDF spokesperson. He's also a senior fellow at the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies, and he is the host of The Bottom Line. Thank you, sir, for being with us. You don't think this is a good deal, but do you think it's a necessary deal?
Yep. Thank you for having me. It's probably the best that we could get in the current conditions, where I think Israel has been limited from applying full pressure on Hamas. And, I'm very happy that 33 Israeli families will get to see their loved ones, hopefully. We don't yet know how many of them are going to see live loved ones and to start a long journey of healing within the family and community. And we don't know how many are dead and will only be finally brought to burial in Israel. So that's still waiting. And of course, the entire country is really on its toes in anticipation for Sunday. Strategically, no, it is not a good deal because Hamas is still in power. And as long as Hamas is in power, that means that the war continues. That means that we have a sworn enemy on the other side of the border, an enemy that wants to destroy Israel. And it's also bad for Palestinians. And I do feel sorry for Palestinians because the fact that Hamas is still in power almost ensures 100% that there's not going to be any substantial reconstruction or alleviation of their situation. And yes, they are suffering in Gaza as a result of Hamas's decisions and Hamas's warfare tactics. And it is very sad that Hamas prioritizes itself and its jihad against Israel over the needs of the civilian population. So it's a bittersweet kind of deal. We'll hope that this is not the end of it and look forward to really achieving what Israel needs to do.
And Jonathan, you clearly feel that Israel has been hamstrung by outside influences. Can you be more specific? And you tell me if I'm not characterizing that correctly. That's just what I'm taking away from what you said. But be specific. Who are you holding responsible for that, feeling that Israel has not been able to exact maximum pressure on Hamas?
You're 100% correct. You're paraphrasing it correctly. And, in war, when you fight a war like this, like Israel is forced to fight, similar to what European countries fought in the Second World War against the really embodiment of evil and the real total desire to destroy Israel, very similar to what the Allied forces faced in Europe, different scale, different industrial capabilities granted, but we are facing the same type of genocidal intent and desires against Israel. And when you fight a war like that, you need to apply all the levels of leverage on your enemy.
But are you pointing at the Biden administration? Are you pointing at the Trump administration? This is basically the same deal that was put forward in May, the framework by the Biden administration, but it wasn't until Trump folks got involved that Israel moved forward with this. So, I mean, who are you looking to when you say that?
No, definitely. I'm not talking about the deal in as such, and you're again correct. The deal is essentially the same. When you asked about how have we gotten here, right? We're 15 months into a war that Israel didn't start and didn't want and wasn't really prepared for, and we still haven't defeated Hamas, and we have not yet achieved our strategic goals, and we have not yet secured our southern border. And that's a problem. And the reason we haven't done so is because we have stopped short of applying all the levels of leverage over our enemy, and yes, including humanitarian aid. In war, you need to use the tools that you have available in order to force your enemy to stop fighting, to break the enemy's will to fight. And there's different ways to do that. Israel has been forced to use less than the capacity that it should be using, and that is why this war has dragged on, much to the detriment of Israeli civilians and also Palestinian civilians who are suffering longer and worse than what they should have been suffering had Israel been able to really conduct decisive warfare against Hamas.
Just to be clear, Jonathan, so you're saying that Israel should have been able I just want to be clear about what you're saying here, that Israel should have been able to use better as a lever humanitarian aid for as a mechanism for meeting its objectives?
Yeah, I'll explain why. This deal, as you said correctly, was on the table and was presented mid and late May by the Biden administration. There was a lot of pressure on Israel to agree to it, and there was pressure on Israel also to allow the provision of fuel and food and other supplies into the Gaza Strip, which we understood was a breaking point for Hamas. Now,
but explain that. But Jonathan, you also understand that that's looked at internationally as collective punishment, which is illegal by international standards. So, I mean, speak to that, because there are people who will zero in on what you're saying, especially as a former IDF spokesperson, and will say that there are problems with that.
I'm sure that people have lots of problems with Israel fighting and defending itself.
That's not what I'm talking, Jonathan. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about what you're saying about food and fuel for civilians in Gaza. And I understand Israel's position that also that I understand that it would be the concern. The concern would be that Hamas would use it, or that Hamas would co-opt it. I know that's the concern of Israel. But the concern of people who worry about yes, I know, and I know that is a valid concern. But the concern of people who look at the suffering of Palestinians would be that they will suffer furthermore because of that.
Yeah, what I say to those people who, I suppose many of them genuinely care for the well-being of Palestinians, of civilians who are not related to Hamas. If they really care about Palestinians, then I think that their top priority should be to focus on getting rid of Hamas, not applying pressure on Israel. Hamas started the war. Hamas wants to destroy Israel and kill all the Jews that they can get their hands on, as they proved on October the 7th. And Hamas is the organization that is using Palestinians, civilians, women and children as their human shields, as they, Hamas, are hiding inside the tunnels. So I fail to see how, this is Israel is to blame. I think Hamas is to blame. And I think that anybody who sincerely, and I emphasize sincerely, cares about Palestinians and their well-being should be focusing and helping Israel to get rid of Hamas. Once Hamas is gone, then the future will be much better for Palestinians in Gaza. Maybe then they can move forward towards self-governance and agency, and to have a future and independence, and to be prosperous and free. That is not in the cards for Palestinians as long as Hamas controls the Gaza Strip. And as Jeremy said before, I think that is correct. This war, sadly, and I live here and it affects me and my family, so I do not say this with joy, this war isn't over until Hamas is defeated. I don't think that lots of people in Israel would even entertain the thought of this being the final act. This is a milestone, and the priority of the state of Israel is to do a less than perfect deal in order to get our people back. And again, we're talking about 33 out of 98. It's not all of our hostages in this stage, unfortunately, but let's say we get our 33 and then we continue to negotiate for the remaining 65. It's not a great deal, but that's what we want to do in order to get our people back. But I don't think that people around the world should be confused or have false expectations. This isn't peace. This isn't the end of the war. This is a ceasefire, and this war will end once Hamas is defeated. I don't think that Israel can take any more chances with jeopardizing its security.
I will just say that we have spoken with people who are sincerely concerned about Israelis, including Israelis, as well as Palestinians, who do see that sometimes when you're talking about excising Hamas in the way that the IDF has, you just end up with so many dead civilians in Gaza, and the numbers bear that out. Jonathan, thank you so much. I think we are all looking towards Sunday and seeing the first of hostages released. They have been away from their families far too long, and we cannot wait to begin seeing that happen. Jonathan Conricus, thank you so much for being with us. So long.
Thank you.
So long. Thank you so much, and we'll be right back.